Good evening. Let me try that again. There we go. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the work session, our first meeting for 2021 to order. The time is 7:02 p.m. Please join me in a moment of silence. Please stand for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. We have no special recognition, been missing our special recognition at our meetings. No public participation tonight. May I have a motion to approve the agenda, please? Okay, been moved by Mr. Johnson. I need a second. Second by Mr. Trey Bailey. All in favor? Okay, thank you. I need a motion for the minutes. Mr. Johnson on the first. I need a second. Second by Mr. Anderson Bailey. All in favor? Okay, thank you. Superintendent's reports.
Yes, ma'am, Madam Chair. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
In the, as way of a summary, in item 1, the special purpose local option for education sales tax distribution for November was $1,361,686, which is an increase of $16,510 from the previous month. The title ad valorem collection for November was $489,732. And finally, expenditures are within budget at 47.31% expended, with 50% of the year complete. And the financials are there for your review as well. And that is the financial report, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any questions regarding the financial report? Okay, thank you. The strategic plan report.
Good evening. The Newton County School System staff held the first ever virtual science fair in December 2020. Students from each middle and high school submitted science fair projects to a digital platform which allowed viewing and feedback by all science fair judges. First place winners have been invited to compete at the Griffin-Risa Regional Science Fair in February. That is under Student Achievement and Success. Under High Quality Workforce, Nyree Sanders and Keith Benton attended the Griffin-Risa Fall TAP information session on December 3rd, 2020 to recruit prospective teacher candidates for the 2021-2022 school year. Under Culture, Climate, and Communication, Newton County school personnel recently received the 2020 Leading Edge Award in the area of climate, culture, and organizational efficacy from the Georgia School Board Association for the district-wide No Place for Hate initiative. The award was announced on December 4th, 2020 during the 2020 GSBA conference. Districts receiving the honor were asked to submit a video detailing their award-winning initiatives. And again, that's under Culture, Climate, and Communication. And finally, under Organizational and Operational Effectiveness, procurement personnel assisted with the collection and delivery of toys donated by businesses in the community. School system staff then distributed them. Madam Chair, that is just a portion of the highlights from the superintendent's report.
Thank you for those highlights, Mr. Roundtree. Do we have any questions or comments regarding the strategic plan report?
A quick question, if I may.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Bailey.
I would just love to get a copy of the video that was submitted to GSBA. Is that something we can get?
Dr. Thomas?
Yes, yes, we'll make it available.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions regarding strategic plan report? Okay, having none, we'll move on to enrollment report.
Our current enrollment is 18,799 students, which is a decrease of 602 students from this time last year when our enrollment was just a little 19,401. That is the enrollment report.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Roundtree. Any questions regarding enrollment report? Okay, none of these are action items for tonight because this is our work session. Moving on to old business. Old business is a review of policies we looked at last month. Go ahead, please.
Yes, ma'am. Items A through D were originally presented at the work session on December 8th and are unchanged. These will require board action on January 19th. So that's items A through D in old business, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. And if anybody is watching, just to bring you up to speed on any policy revisions or changes or any time a policy is added by law, it must sit on the table for at least 30 days to allow public input. So that is why this continues as old business. Next week, we'll be voting on these, okay? New business.
Yes, ma'am. New business, the superintendent recommends a retention with revisions and the abolishment of certain policies in sections A through C. These policies will remain under review until the next regular meeting of the Newton County Board of Education. As a little background, after consultation with representatives of GSBA and legal counsel, it is necessary to retain, revise, and abolish certain policies. In section A, which deals with school district organization, it is recommended policy AFC be retained. In section B, which deals with school board operations, it's recommended the following policies be retained: BBA, BBD, BCBD, BD, and BHB. It is recommended the following policies be retained with revisions: BBFA, BCA, BCBI, and BH. Finally, it is recommended the following policies be abolished: BCBK and BCBF. And in section C, which deals with general school administration, it is recommended the following policy be retained: CN. And finally, recommended the following policies be abolished: CEB and CGK. The policies requiring revisions are included in supporting documents for review. Policies to be retained or abolished are listed in the policy section of the recommendation that you see before you. And that is item A, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Barr. I bet you can't say that 10 times fast. All right, anybody have any questions regarding item A? Okay, nobody has questions. I am going to ask to be excused. I'm sorry, you guys. I have something in my eye that's bothering me. So I'm going to ask that Ms. Coggin take over as chair until I return.
Let's see, moving on to item B.
Yes, ma'am. In item B, the superintendent recommends the annual renewable contract awarded to Home Depot Pro of Jacksonville, Florida, for a comprehensive custodial program be renewed for an additional term. The effective date will be January 22nd, 2021, with an expiration date of January 21, 2022. The estimated contract value is $490,602. The comprehensive solution includes the following components: an extension of environmentally friendly cleaning program that includes products and processes, a full line of supplies including consumables, chemicals, dispensing stations, janitorial supplies, the implementation of a comprehensive training program, a wide variety of effective and efficient equipment options, the repair and service of all equipment to ensure optimal operation. The vendor has performed satisfactorily, met all contractual requirements, and has agreed to continue under the same terms and conditions under the original contract. This deals with strategic goal area 4, organizational and operational effectiveness. The contract documentation is there for your review, as is the funding source. And that is item B.
All right, do we have any questions about item B? All right, if there are none, we will move on to C.
Yes, ma'am. In item C, the superintendent recommends the annual renewable contract for plumbing services be awarded to B&W Mechanical Contractors Incorporated of Lawrenceville, Georgia. The effective date is January 22, 2021, with an expiration date of January 21, 2022. The estimated contract value is $205,000. The vendor's proposals were reviewed, evaluated, and scored via a multi-stage process by school personnel. The vendors and their scores are provided there for your review. After such review, it was determined the proposal submitted by B&W Mechanical Contracts offered the best value to the school system, and in addition, they were offered the overall lowest price. This deals with strategic goal area 4, organizational operational effectiveness. The contract documentation is there for review, as well as the funding source.
Okay, are there any questions related to item C?
Yes, I have one.
All right.
I don't see any billing rate that will determine the cost of the project or the work function to be performed?
The hourly labor rate is $85 for B&W Mechanical Incorporated, and for the other proposer, it was $115 an hour.
So the 85 would go to the one that you selected, is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
I have a question.
Okay.
Has B&W done any work for us in the past?
Not that I recall, no, sir.
Excuse me, what was the question?
If B&W had done any work for us in the past? I just like Talon was new last year, B&W is now new this year. It seems like we're looking for a good plumber.
Talon requested a price increase, and so we thought it was of value to put it back out again for another try at cost. And so B&W does offer a lower cost than what Talon had indicated they were willing to continue the contract under.
I can't understand you.
Okay. Talon previously did the work, but they had requested a price increase in the contract. And so we thought it would be of value to see what was in the marketplace via a new solicitation. And so that's the reason for the solicitation. And we were able to get lower pricing, which is reflected in the recommendation.
So I'm trying to understand what you're saying. You didn't put this out for bid?
Yes, sir, we did. Yes,
You did.
through request for proposal process.
I have a question. How well would they service the prior company versus to this company? Do you know anything about their service versus?
Yes, sir, they provide references, and so we've validated all those references to make sure that they are a reliable company. So we feel comfortable with the recommendation.
When you made the statement, I can't find it now, that you had several things that you weighted in helping you select the right bidder. And one of them, you made the statement that pricing is not always the most valuable component. What component did you find so appealing other than price?
In an RFP solicitation, there are two parts. One is the technical proposal and one is the cost proposal. So the cost proposal is weighted at 40%. So in this particular situation, the cost was was very important because they offered the lowest cost. The others are listed there, and I can find them for you if you give me just a second, or we can come back to them, or I can send them to you. But they are within the document that's provided for your review.
All right, any other questions? If there are none, I'm going to turn it back over to Madam Chair.
Thank you. Item D.
Yes, ma'am. Just for Mr. Johnson, they're on page 13,
Oh.
I believe. Page 16. Page 16 of 18 lists the technical proposal criteria. And that is item C. And so in item D, the superintendent recommends the identified items be declared surplus and disposed of per board policy DO. And the surplus list is there for your review.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Barr. Any questions on item D? Item E.
In item E, the superintendent recommends the approval of personnel matters as discussed in executive session.
Okay, thank you. Item E is an action item, so I do need a motion from the floor, please.
So moved.
Okay, been moved by Mrs. Coggan. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Johnson. I'll call for the question. All in favor? Okay, any opposed? 5-0. Thank you. Item F.
In item F, the superintendent recommends that the proposed calendar of meeting dates for the Newton County Board of Education for January 2021 through January 2022 be approved. This is a requirement of policy BCA, and the proposed BOE meeting dates are there for your review, Madam Chair, in item F.
Okay, thank you. So with the proposed meeting dates, everybody needs to look at the dates to make sure there are not any conflicts. You know, typically we always meet on the second and third Tuesday of every month. with the exception of the months that we have a break, which is April due to spring break, October due to fall break, and I think that's all on the calendar. So we just need to make sure the dates work for us before we approve. I also would like to remind organizations and the schools that board members are parents and grandparents. So we really love being parents and grandparents. So please, I say that because tonight I had a parent meeting that I could not make because I'm here. And so with that, please, please, please try to schedule those things that around the board meeting dates. We want parents to listen to the board meetings, but also because we're parents and grandparents, we want to be able to come to our own kids and grandkids meetings as well. Okay? So everybody make sure the calendar does not conflict. You want to say something, Mrs.?
Just, just one thing, the December meeting typically, the reason that it's only one time during the month of December is because the third meeting would fall at a time when we would not be.
Okay.
There's a couple months this year that are different. We're meeting third and fourth.
April.
July, May, is that right?
Yeah.
But have these haven't changed since the last draft that was sent to us, right?
Okay, perfect. Item G also is, I'll just do that item, Dr. Barr, because I'm going to have to introduce it anyway. Item G is the appointment of our delegate and our alternate delegate for the GSBA Summer Conference. So we'll need to select a delegate next week and then an alternate delegate for that. And Mr. Anderson Bailey, you're new with us. And so what they are going to try to do, Mr. Bailey, is make you the delegate. That's why they're already laughing. So, but no, seriously, we select a delegate that goes to the conference, and generally the conference presents legislative ideas or their legislative priorities. The delegate votes on that, can argue against them or whatever, make recommendations, and then the delegate also votes on officers for the association. So it's not a hard job. Just go ahead and tell you that up front. Look. So welcome to the family. And then item H, we'll need to select a legislative liaison as well. And so that person will serve as a liaison between what's going on at the General Assembly and our legislators in terms of education policy. Ironically, the first policy introduced today on the education, about education, had to do with vouchers. So the very first one had to do with vouchers and diverting public school system funds for those people who want a voucher for their child to be able to go to private school. The very first one, they starting already. So, yeah.
Something related, just question.
Yeah.
Do you know does anybody know if we're going to see any legislation that allows local boards not to have to be partisan? To not have to choose a party? Because I think that was, you haven't heard that?
So that was a long argument during the association. So that's a great, actually a great question. So I can kind of paint it out to Mr. Bailey, Mr. Anderson Bailey, what he will be doing as our delegate more than likely. So one of the legislative priorities that came up was that a couple of school boards in counties across the state had proposed legislation for GSBA to use their advocates or their lobbyists to push legislators to make all counties nonpartisan. However, they did not add that as legislation. It was a very lengthy discussion. I was on that call. It was a very lengthy discussion. Reason being is because they want to leave it to the local authority, so the local board to make the decision. And some of them have said that in some communities, it may not work out well because you may have, unless you have a party, you may end up having a board that's not diversified. So that was some of the arguments with it. It is a local thing if you want to push it to the local legislators. And then it would be up to our local legislators if they want to move it forward. So it was over an hour-long discussion, I'm gonna tell you that. So, yeah. So it would be a local decision, basically, and then it'd be up to our legislators locally. Okay. Item I, so next week we will also vote on a chair and a vice chair for 2021. I have been through the most as the chairperson, so I can't wait till next week. So item I will have a chair and a vice chair. And then other matters of interest. Anybody have any other matters of interest to discuss? Everybody quiet.
I would just, you may want to talk about it, so I'm not trying to, I wanted to make sure.
Oh, yesterday?
Yeah.
You can go ahead.
Okay, so, yesterday afternoon, Ms. Henderson Baker and I participated in, a meeting with, our local delegation, 6 different people, 2 senators and 4 representatives, and they were not all present because some of them were still at the Capitol and the processes there kind of backed them up. And so I think we wound up with Representative Crow, Representative Lewis Ward, Senator Strickland, and Representative Belton. And then we were missing Representative Henderson and, I'm missing one, who am I missing? Clint?
Anderson. Uh-huh.
Yes, time, so that's what it was. At any rate, it was an opportunity for us to share with our local delegation our priorities, and so I prepared our board legislative priorities document, brought that, and then we talked about looking at some priority areas, the first of which is restoring our $10.8 million reduction in QBE funding, and then also not using the CARES dollars that we have received and will receive as a basis for reducing QBE funding in the future. So keeping those 2 pieces absolutely separate. I also recommended that, given the circumstances and times that we are facing, that they also earmark dollars for a counselor, mental health professional in every one of our schools. And so we talked a little bit about that, and then I also said that I would hope that, given the highlight that the pandemic has put on the broadband internet access, and recognizing that there are some people threading the needles behind the scenes, that our local delegation put some oomph behind that for our community, so that there is not a child or a family who doesn't have access to the internet. And we need a process, a procedure, and a plan in place to make that happen. And so we talked, I shared those ideas with them, and then I'm gonna follow up in writing just so they have everything we said on a piece of paper that can remind them of where we are. And I also shared, there was some conversation that the legislative body does not understand the process by which we draw down funds that are federal dollars. And so we pay the funds as the items come in. So we've spent, several hundreds of thousands of dollars on technology. So if you're looking at the spreadsheet, it might still say there's $100 left in the bank. Well, that's because we haven't received the $100 worth of items to come in. So we're not going to pay for them until we receive and take an accounting for them. And so I explained to the delegation yesterday, the members who were present, that what we've expended those dollars on, so that they knew that the money is not just sitting there waiting for a place to go, that we need the dollars and that we will use them to take care of our students and our community. And so I think, and then Ms. Henderson Baker talked about teachers and along the lines of mental health support and care for our students, but also recognizing that teachers need that kind of support as well. And so we talked with them about that, and they were very interested in hearing about that as well. So it was a good 15, 20 minutes that we were able to spend with them. So.
Yeah, I think we went over our time.
We did.
Because they had a lot of questions for what we brought them, though, especially the mental health aspect,
Yes.
because they didn't understand how that was paid for, like with the state creating the APEX program, and it's supposed to be mental health counselors in every single school, but they're not understanding that the APEX money does not guarantee that, because it's half. So the Apex money pays for half of the clinician, and then that specific CSB has to supplement the rest of their salary. So therefore, you may not have one in individual one in every single school, because it depends on how much funding the CSB having, and trying to look at how you fund those clinicians so that you can push more money into that program. But also thinking, like Ms. Fury said, I mentioned about the teachers. I think I had told you guys that before. I discussed that when I was on the call with the governor about the teachers, about, you know, that many of our educators or our staff, all of this is new. This is a what we call in counseling a life transition or a life stressor or a new environment. And so many of them have like anxiety or overwhelmness, or, you know, just kind of need to talk through some things and stuff. And so with that being said, we do programs for our students, but what about the people who are responsible for our students the entire day? So maybe looking at something that will support our teachers, our educators, our staff in that area as well. Then I also mentioned about technology. So I talked about how, because one of the things we always hear is a comparison of our county to Rockdale, unfortunately. So the first thing we hear is Rockdale is 1-1. They've been 1-1, you know. And so I always try to educate people, well, many of you guys shop in Rockdale, and so what you're doing is giving Rockdale, you know, the East Floss dollars instead of putting those dollars in Newton. And those dollars pay for technology for the school systems. So Rockdale may be 1-1 because all the Newton people go to Target and Kohl's and all of those things. So I talked about looking at communities or counties that do not have a lot of those retail or stores that bring in the East Floss dollars that school systems can use. You find that in our county, you find that a lot in the South. You know, you have to think about the exits. Some of the exits you go by, they don't even have restaurants or fast food things. So there are many counties across the state, like South or up north, except if you're in Dawsonville, that has a whole outlet, that are suffering with bringing in those East Floss dollars that make it difficult for that county or that district to be 1-1. So looking at some type of dollars or some way to magically support that. And then I also mentioned to them that if they ever had questions, I think those that have done an excellent job. Mr. Strickland has done an excellent job. Dave Belton reaches out. Tanya Anderson, even though she wasn't there, she always sends me a text message or reach out and say, hey, this is on the floor. Let me ask you what you're thinking. And in past, Ms. Dickerson, but Ms. Dickerson is no longer a representative now, it's Ms. Henderson. So I was really looking forward to having the conversations with the freshman representatives. Ms. Lewis Ward was there, and then the other gentleman was there as well and stuff. But making sure they know they can always reach out to one of us instead of just kind of like voting on a policy. Reach out to us and ask us how we're feeling about it or how have we read it. So those are some of the things.
I think
Just
the
on the
final-
counselor part again, I just missed the acronym. You said
Apex.
Well, no, they have half the funding, and then you said something else, some.
And so it's typically supplemented by the CSB, the Community Service Board they work for. So the state of Georgia is divided up into CSBs. So like CSB, Community Support. So they're divided up into CSBs. So like here, the CSB is Viewpoint Health. So it used to be, Viewpoint Health used to be called Newton, Rockdale, and Gwinnett. So those are the county that represent that CSB. They changed their name because they also do child and adolescent services, and their child and adolescent services go outside of Newton, Rockdale, and Gwinnett. So they actually offer services in Macon, Augusta, Savannah, I forget the other areas.
But the Viewpoint is what I'm just trying to lock in on where this funding could come from. It would come from Viewpoint?
So the Apex, so the governor pushed money in the Apex program, or the state pushed money in the Apex program. An Apex counselor is strictly for the school system.
Right.
So that Apex counselor, though, may be paid half by the Apex grant. And typically, you're not going to find a clinician that's going to work part-time during the day. Like some of our positions, you're not going to find an educator that's willing to work part-time. So a CSB typically has to hire that person as full-time, which means now the CSB has to supplement the salary. And so I think many of the legislators are under the impression that it's paying for them full-time, and it's not. And then there's some leeway how you use the grant, the Apex grant too. So it allows some leeway from some of the CSBs to kind of supplement it how they want to. And until they put more money into it to make sure that CSBs are using it as full-time salary, you're not gonna get as many clinicians as they initially thought.
Okay.
So,
I think I understand now. I just can't, I'm still trying to find the funding source for the viewpoint or the CSVs, and that is also state dollars?
yes,
Okay.
yeah. So it goes to, each of those fall up under the division of DBHDD. So, Department of Behavior, Health, and Developmental Disabilities. You're welcome. You know, it's an acronym for everything.
The only thing that I would add to that conversation is true that it's not just our educators who need the support, it's our staff, as Ms. Henderson-Baker pointed out. And I also mentioned equalization. Our school system benefits from equalization, which is critical. It's a significant portion of our budget. It's about, Erica, $21 million. So if the legislative body begins to tinker with equalization, it has a really strong ripple effect in our school system. So my recommendation is to leave equalization alone, and they seemed amenable to that. Now, I don't know what it's like across the rest of the state, because there are some winners and losers when it comes to equalization. And so for our school system, it really is a lifeblood, and has been since the recession. And I'm hopeful that they will continue to afford us equalization in some way, shape, or form at the level that we're experiencing. Otherwise, those dollars will have to come from someplace else. So I'm not hearing that they're going to remove it, but it is a place for opportunity. So I wanted to make sure we put that out there.
I will say when Ms. Fury talked about that, as a clinician, I look at body language. So the body language really said, I don't understand. So I'm glad that you brought that one up. So I do want you to follow up on that
I
one
will.
because the body language did say, like, I don't understand it. And you saw all of this note taking, and that's an important one that they really need to understand. So.
And I have drafted my notes, and then I have a chart that I've added to, because a lot of times people understand charts better than a whole bunch of words. So I've added a chart where I'll send it out, and I'll send it to you also, you see what I'm saying. But I've got to get, some of the new members don't have I can't find their email addresses yet, so if they hold the same format, first name, got last name, and then whatever. But Lewis Ward, I don't know how they work with that, so I got to reach out to her.
Well, I'm grateful that Superintendent and Madam Chair, that you guys are advocating on behalf of Newton County, so thank you for doing that.
I'm glad the chamber hosted it. It was very good.
Yeah, I'm glad they came. Okay. There are no other matters of interest. Then may I have a motion to adjourn? Okay, it's been moved by Mrs. Coggins, second by Mr. Johnson. All in favor? Okay, meeting adjourned 5-0, 7:35 p.m.